The topic that we are discussing today, trial by media, is not as easy as we'd like to think. What comes to our mind immediately is something like Sushant Singh Rajput's case, where every gory detail of who said what and who WhatsApped what to whom came out and had very little connection with the case. What Mahesh Bhatt may have said to this young lady is none of our business to know. I don't think it's anybody's business to know. But then, as I said, the topic is a bit complicated, and to make it easier for us to understand, I would split it into 3 to 4 parts. One is, no one is questioning the right of the media to expose. To expose is not to drag it on trial. To expose is a fundamental right of the media. I've been part of it. I started in the media, then made the mistake of joining the IAS, and I'm ended my career 5 years in the media. It's not as easy as you think. You are up against a stone wall. I know, now that I'm in the opposition, I know what a stone wall means. It's very difficult to ferret news, accurate news. So they have their task made out, and no one is accusing them of any wrongdoing by exposing. If somebody exposes a fat man with a girlfriend, it's their business. No one can come in the way, should come in the way. That's my personal belief. I don't know what I should say publicly, but it really doesn't matter. We are among friends. So the right to expose corruption, the right to expose wrongdoing is their fundamental right. And our present problem is that many of them seem to have developed cold feet. They don't seem to be taking extra energy in exposing what is right, but in agreeing with the narrative that has been set. That is our charge against the media, not on its fundamental right to expose. The second part of it is my and your privacy. Expose what? If I have WhatsApp someone at 1 o'clock at night, as every other human being has done, I'm talking of male friends. Yeah, they're looking so suspiciously at me, but whatever I've done is my business. Why do you need to take my WhatsApp and say he said what and this? The language may not be very civil. So let me be within the walls of my privacy. You have no business to come and disturb my privacy. And privacy is not something that you are giving me, you are donating me as the annual subscription for Durga Puja. Sorry. Privacy is my fundamental right, and it has been enshrined, as Jayantada put it so well, in Article 19, with or without limitations. Article 21 gives me the right to privacy. The UN Declaration on Human Rights enshrines it. The International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, Article 12 says I have the right, and it is a well-guarded right. You cannot take it away from me because A, you did not give it to me. We earned it. So having said that, privacy, what constitutes breach of privacy and what constitutes exposure is the thin dividing line. Is photographing Jacqueline Onassis in the Altogether on Scorpius Island an invasion of privacy or an exposure? I mean, exposure of her photographs. Photographs of her photographs, whatever. So, is it constitute an act of invasion of privacy? Every man with certain degree of common sense, of course, there are lots of them floating around with even lower than the minimal degree. But having said that, none in this room. Having said that, I would insist that we know where there's a breach of privacy. Why do we need to see the intimate connection between, say, that girl, what's her name? That Riya Chakravarti, whatever. So, and that young man whom I actually saw after his death, but never mind. I didn't tell it to my son, he would get shocked at my degree of irrelevance with a disconnect with life. whatever be it. Now this too, what does it matter? What they're exchanging? It's biology that's prompting them. So what's your concern about getting into their biological expression or the expressions of their processes? What does it matter? So there, that invasion into privacy is a second matter. But the third dangerous matter that emanates out of number one and number two is the trial on media. Trial by media. Trial on media is not per se bad. Aurobindo's trial on the Indian media was a big wake-up call to Indians to stand up to British rule. It was serialized. Every day of the court, Alipur Judges Court, was serialized. And it should be. So that is trial reported by media. But here, the media was conducting the trial on behalf, obviously, of elements who were there, had their vested interest to sink the ship of Bollywood because it was getting too arrogant. That's it. We know it, I know it. It was followed by this, that Shah Rukh Khan's son, whatever his name, God bless him. Now, for a few grams, and then you get tons and tons of that drug landing up in a friendly port by a user-friendly man who lent his plane to someone to come to Delhi to take his oath and is being paid magnificently thereafter. That is not exposed. So what can be exposed and what can be done is a matter which everybody with his right conscience would know. But the objection is, can the media take on the role of legal practitioners on the bar or the bench? I would submit no. I would submit no. A, sir, madam, you are ill-informed. B, you have TRP swinging in front of you. You have circulation figures and TRP. You are not motivated with the right neutrality of desire. And you have no business messing up into somebody else's business. So there I would say that having been with the media also, it is none of our business. And see how dangerous it is to human society. The most famous, notorious public trial case, a public trial on media case, was the Dreyfus case. Every student of journalism knows the Dreyfus case, Dreyfus. In the 19th century, Dreyfus was accused, he was a Jew, and he was accused by the French media of all the sins that are humanly possible. This was preceding the anti-Judaic wave of Europe, of Hitler. And he was tried over and over again by the media that condemned him. And finally, the trial court found that he was not guilty, much to the disappointment of the satiated readers. Now, this sort of thing has been going on. I have mentioned in the recent past that Sushant Singh Rajput's case, I can go on mentioning any number of cases where people are tried out on the media. Now, would somebody turn back and say that current events in Bengal, see, I stick my neck out like a giraffe, and that's my problem. Now, would the current events in Bengal not be exposed? I say, of course. But please don't carry on the trial that the judge's court should do, not you. Give the evidence, let the official evidence found. In fact, I had also forgotten that those red notes were 2,000 rupee notes. I'd forgotten, I don't see them anymore. But never mind. Now, each one has his assigned duty, and we should not, I humbly seek, cross over to assume the charges of professionals meant for that. Titillate the audience for viewership or for circulation. No, there are some places we draw a line. This is not governed by the sweet will of the government or the bitter will of the government, as is evident now. It is not governed by that. It is governed by codes. The British NBA, the Broadcasting Authority, has a code. The French Civil Code covers my right to privacy and how much you can poke in. The Swedish Central Court has laid down guidelines. And in India, there have been feeble attempts to, I was on the press council, again for no fault of mine. So, and I have gone through the deliberations. They're like plucking little flowers and chucking it a rhinoceros, that sort of thing, as effective as that. You can't do anything with such thing. So in India, it is within the realm of intent. India, today the fear is not that the trials are carried on the behest of governmental interest, exposures are made at the interest of certain interests, or else the outright purchase of MLAs of Maharashtra don't make news. No ED, no CBI goes there. The going figure to me, if I heard in the corridors of Parliament, was something like 10,000 crores. And somebody said 10,000 crores? आप बच्चे हो ना, आप नहीं जानते हो कुछ. I said ठीक है. चलो, nothing is exposed. So we have, coming back to the topic, I would say the right of the media to expose, to inform, and there's a third word. Sati Otaki? Entertain. Inform, educate, entertain. The entertain is getting to be a bit too much. And not to kowtow. Not to kowtow isn't not to be over agreeable in the position of lapdogs, what is now known as Godi. I have been very much part of the emergency, and it was on a particular day of the emergency that I was declared to be in the IAS, again for no fault. So I just switched over from this side of the barricade to the other side. That's all. Carried on my. So I know what the emergency was. We know what it was. So we have seen people with spine stand up at that point of time. We see very little people, very few people with spine now standing up. That is our moderation. Trial by media is ipso facto right at the beginning. Trial by the media is something that we just need not even discuss. They have no right. It is like a veterinary doctor performing Kunal Sarkar's duty. He will not know which part of the body to open. So why assume, why empower somebody who is not authorized or educated enough to get in, just because he has the weapon of exposure? I do submit again, I come back, that I respect the right of the media, the duty of the media, and the difficulties of the media. I really know how difficult it is to ferret out news, especially nowadays in many places of India. Very difficult. You were just blacked out. When I asked the Civil Aviation Secretary that how did you hand over 7 airports to somebody whose only qualification to handle airlines is that he's a passenger like me, or he may be a more frequent flyer than me, that's all. What are the other qualifications gone? The qualifications that we used to put up past experience and all that? He said, sir, everything has been done as per rules. And said the rules were adequately changed. Now, this is the fundamental duty of the media to expose. Trial by media is not acceptable at all, but the right to expose with certain regard to privacy of the individual, that just cannot be violated for any TRP. Thank you very much.
What body of intelligence our politicians and parliamentarians are.
Jawhar, as a former chairman of Doordarshan, did you ever apologize?
See, we can go on making value judgments about this and that, but each one has its own nuances, each one has its own problem. About television, which makes our blood boil most of the time, if one chooses to watch them. You see, the problem is that it's a very expensive medium. So you have to run a story again and again and again and go in for a bite, which is called loop pe phela dao. There are tricks of the trade and there are nuances of the trade that compel it also to go in for sensationalism, because time is short, attention is short. আনন্দবাজারের মতো অত ডিটেলস বসে চায়ের কাপের ওপর তারপর বাকি হাফটা পরে পড়বো হয় না. So there are problems on both sides, but I will now, since I've crossed my double seniority, go in for a little maturity on these accounts. It's all right. I firmly believe that the media should not get in for trial. It's not negotiable. 2, 3, 4 cases Simpson can be pointed out, Manu Sharma can be pointed out and all that. But let's take one case at a time. If you take Jessica Lal, it was NDTV that inspired the whole thing. I was there in Delhi. The whole thing happened. And it's a very deserving case. But will anybody stand up for NDTV's murder last night and go in for a candlelight? Will anybody do that? So we get back to what is practical, what goes on with the times, and we have to see. I cannot accuse the entire TV media, but all I say is that if we insist that they don't get into all this trial business, but my insistence or your insistence won't do anything. They have to prove their utter loyalty to God and government, which incidentally are the same in this country, and to this merger of God and government, and have to go on paying the price of the loyalty, or they'll be raided. They'll be raided. Everybody has been raided. The right, the wrong, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Everybody has been raided, but nobody has been raided for the fall of 11 governments. 11 governments have been toppled, starting from Manipur and Goa. 11 governments have been toppled, and including the last one in Maharashtra, where the stakes are very high. So this toppling was not by the party of saints with Ganga Pani. It was done with something, but there was no ED. So let's not get into this accusation. There is a transition happening in India, which I feel this thing, between the cash economy and the cashless conduit economy. There's a conduit coming in from big capital that keeps rising every day. It's a steel conduit that the party concerned cannot also do anything. It goes direct to the two persons. And the two persons control the party. They in turn control the organization. So it's a terrible thing that's happening. We need to sit back and analyze what is happening. Petty thievery is happening in places. Large-scale looting is happening in places. We all need to get conscious. So I would end by saying that we need to take an overview of the whole thing, what is going on. Need to go beyond the immediate. Nobody can condone robbery. Nobody can condone thievery. But having said that, there were scales. Even in British India, there were scales. They had set up scales. The takeover and the sale of a nation cannot be compared. The complete takeover and stranglehold over a nation and its complete sale at reduced prices on obligation basis, quid pro quo basis, cannot be compared to every Tom, Dick and Harry circumstance. So, thank you for the patience.